You clicked on this video because you have a highly practical question, something very few people ever dare to bring up. Our ancestors lived in tribes of 30 to 50 people. They slept crammed together in caves or out in wide-open campsites with absolutely no walls or partitions. So how did they handle their delicate needs? How did they go to the bathroom? And what about getting intimate? Let's take a trip back in time to find out how our ancestors managed to turn invisible within the tribe. And more importantly, how privacy, which started out as a big fat zero, evolved into our modern-day obsession. Flashback to a few 100,000 years ago. Our ancestors, early Homo sapiens, lived completely wild and naked. Back then, the concept of privacy simply didn't exist. Their lives played out entirely in the open, just like every other animal on the savanna. Just to look at chimpanzees and bonobos, our closest living relatives. For them, eating, going to the bathroom, or even mating happens right out in the open, in the middle of the troop. It's purely a form of social interaction. It's basically their version of grabbing a cup of coffee or hanging out at a bar. There's absolutely nothing to hide. But wait, there's a massive misconception we need to clear up right here. Even though their brains hadn't yet installed the software called shame, prehistoric humans did occasionally sneak away from the crowd to do their business or get busy. Not because they were romantic, and not because they needed a quiet space to light some candles. The reason was much more pragmatic. Survival instinct. Why sneak away to go to the bathroom? Pure survival. The smell of human waste would attract pathogens, flies, parasites, and worst of all, hungry predators. Heading away from the camp and hiding downwind was an ironclad rule to protect the entire tribe. It had absolutely nothing to do with being afraid of someone peeping. And what about getting intimate? Why sneak off to a hidden corner? Imagine being crammed into a cave with 50 other people. Trying to do the deed right in the middle of everyone means you're probably going to get stepped on. More importantly, breaking away from the group was a way to dodge jealous eyes. It helped avoid biological competition and bloody conflicts with other alpha males. Sneaking around was about staying alive, not setting the mood. If we weren't wired to need privacy in the first place, where did this feeling of awkwardness and wanting to hide even come from? It didn't just pop up out of nowhere. It's the direct result of three massive disruptive milestones in our evolutionary history. Milestone 1. The invention of clothing. Roughly 170,000 years ago, the climate turned brutal. Our ancestors started skinning animals and wearing their hides. The goal was simple: don't freeze to death. But wear clothes long enough, and you get used to them. The act of covering up, repeated generation after generation, accidentally carved a brand new concept into the human psyche: covered zones. When a body part is constantly hidden away, suddenly putting it on display becomes an abnormal event. Evolutionary psychology makes this crystal clear. The feeling of shame only kicks in when an individual breaks the shared norms of the community. You can't have the urge to hide if you don't know what it means to feel ashamed. Think about that sheer moment of panic when you're walking down the street and suddenly realize your zipper is down. That sheer panic, the seeds for it were planted by that very first piece of animal skin way back when. Milestone 2. Agriculture and private property. Around 10,000 years ago, the second massive shift happened with the agricultural revolution. We got tired of running ourselves ragged chasing after mammoths. We finally settled down. We started growing wheat and herding sheep. Resources began to pile up. And boom, the concept of my stuff, private property, was officially born. To protect my grain and my flock of sheep from thieves and predators, what do? I build a fence, I put up brick walls. Archaeological sites like Çatalhöyük in modern-day Turkey back this up perfectly. Dwellings with internal partitions only started popping up when humans learned to accumulate personal wealth, rather than just hunting and sharing everything communally like before. At first, those walls were strictly built to guard objects, but inadvertently, they also boxed humans into enclosed, separate spaces. From that point on, privacy became deeply intertwined with physical security. That evolutionary chain is still unbroken today. From putting up a wooden fence to guard your sheep, all the way to setting up Face ID on your iPhone. It all sends the exact same message: don't touch my stuff. Milestone 3. Individualism. The last few hundred years. The final milestone. The truth is, the right to privacy as we define it today is incredibly young. It only really exploded around the 18th and 19th centuries in Europe. The printing press was born, philosophy flourished, the Industrial Revolution kicked off. All of this tore humanity away from the traditional communal village lifestyle. For the very first time, the individual self was put on the highest pedestal. Humanity started to believe that every single person needs a sacred physical and mental space, an untouchable sanctuary to freely develop as an individual. And just like that, The bedroom door was officially locked. Today, we've taken that sanctuary to a whole new level, throwing on noise-canceling headphones on a packed subway, flipping our phones to Do Not Disturb. Modern humans have successfully spun an invisible cocoon, perfectly detached from the rest of the world. Modern humans have perfected their very own cocoon. The history of privacy is one of humanity's greatest paradoxes. For our ancestors, the sound of someone breathing next to them meant survival. Snoring meant safety. The crackling of the campfire meant home. Being left alone wasn't a chance to relax. It was a death sentence. It meant abandonment. Your very existence had to be entirely merged with the tribe. But look at us today. Privacy isn't an innate gift from nature, it's a side effect of civilization. We put on clothes only to teach ourselves how to feel ashamed. We built walls to protect our property, only to lock ourselves inside them. We fought for individualism. We forged thick doors. We installed premium soundproof glass, all in exchange for perfect isolation. And because of that, we are now facing a syndrome our ancient ancestors never knew. An epidemic of depression and psychological isolation. In this crazy race for absolute privacy, we've inadvertently lost something primal, the very core of our human biology, the instinct to belong. What about you? Do you prefer the safety of isolation, or do you crave the feeling of belonging to a community? Drop your answers in the comments below, and don't forget to hit like and subscribe so we can keep decoding more fascinating paradoxes together.